So there's this problem with fans, and they're not huge problems, but for some people they are, and that fans are not the most compact because you have a circle. And the thing about a circle is it's not as compact as a square, but it's how much area it takes. So in theory, you can move more volume if you could have a square fan. Of course, square fans do not work nicely, and we're packing everything because squares do not you can't rotate a blade and make a nice square. Another thing is noise and a little bit about energy efficiency. There's some loss in energy efficiency of a fan because the outer tips of the blade are spinning at a different speed than the inner tips, and they cover a different amount of the circle. The outer tips are spinning faster because they cover more distance, but they also hit less air, the less big part of the circle. As you can see that if you look at the outer tip and it's 1 inch wide and it's covering 26 inches, it's only 1 out of the 26 inches. They also interact less with the air before it because the fan hits some air, then the air moves, but then it doesn't move away. So the fan, to be most efficient, would need to be designed for a certain speed and would have varying blades for the entire fan, and there's more vortices and stuff that actually lose energy and actually make the whole thing a lot more noisy. So you have all these things going together. The fans are not the best. Now you might be like, oh, fans are one of the most efficient ways of cooling, and they are one of the most efficient ways of cooling people when it's below, when it's not too hot outside. They're not just heating up the people. If it's above room temperature, above body temperature, a fan will actually heat you up. And the colder it is, the more efficient a fan is at cooling you down. But the reason why I think efficiency is a big deal is because what about poor places where they have almost no access to electricity? And those places can be some of the hardest places. And every little bit helps. Or what if you're taking a portable fan with you and you're powering it by a battery or something? So I want to talk about a way to improve fans for cooling. So there's something called an air multiplier. And the air multiplier, I pictured one, and Dyson has some, but they're enormously expensive, and I don't think they need to be that expensive. How an air fan works is air multiplier, and they use a bunch of things. You can also, some people call them Bladeless Fans, which you'll see is actually a false name. Is that air gets forced through these little jets along this perimeter. So if you imagine a whole circle, which is what I shown here, or a cylinder, whole cylinder, in these little cylinders, air that gets forced out of little things, and then that sucks in more air, so a whole blade doesn't have to have air in it. In this cavity is actually a little fan. So this bladeless fans are a misnomer. They do have a blade that blows the air forces out these little holes along the whole thing, that then sucks in the air. This sucked in air fills in little gaps and stuff, decreasing vortices, which means that these, instead of making noise or twirling around air and stuff like that in little circles and stuff, it all goes more to moving the air. And it moves more air than normal. And also the vortices are what makes a lot of noise, so this whole thing can be a lot more quiet, a lot more energy efficient. To give you a now let's see if there's a diagram. Here's a diagram showing the fan a little bit. Here's another one showing the fan a little bit and how it goes out. A bunch of them that show the little fan that's hidden in the base, and the whole misnomer comes from. Now they also use in this thing something called an airfoil, which I drew an ugly one here to increase the efficiency. So the air actually comes out over the top of the airfoil like this. What an airfoil does is it's what actually creates lift for a plane. A plane wing is an airfoil, but it's also used in the wing in a bunch of blades and stuff. And it creates a place of high and low pressure. The high pressure is air moving more along a flat surface, like I drew on the bottom in purple. But the top is a curved surface. And this does a couple things to lower the air pressure there. One is that air follows the curve to some extent. And then it has to reach the bottom. Now, when it's following the curve, if the air on the top of the curve is traveling the same speed as bottom, there's gonna be gaps in the air. Some of the air is not gonna reach all those things here, and that's gonna create low pressure. It's kind of like if you had a imagine if you had a tube, and in both one tube was bigger than a tube, but if you one tube that was bigger and a tube that's smaller, you're pumping in the same amount of air. In the bigger tube, you're going to have lower pressure because the air is going to be more spaced out. Well, in the gaps made by the curved surface that I saw over here, all the stuff over here is a gap. That's going to create lower pressure. And remember, it's also following the curve, so everything, the dot following the curve is going to be a little more spread out. Now, the other way is that to actually catch up with the bottom air, so there's not different speeds, the top actually flows faster, and the faster something flows, the lower its pressure is in a certain direction. The way, not in the direction where you're facing front forward, but in the other way, the lower the speed is, because stuff gets more spread out. It's like if you have 10 cars, and then suddenly they all speed up, they might speed up and become farther apart compared to the bottom, which I also drew with little dots here. So you have both of these effects, and that is used in these air multipliers that I saw before with the pressure to even pump in more air, and they also reduce vortices and reduce sound even further. All benefits. And increase efficiency. Now if you have many air multipliers next to each other, which is more efficient, with many holes, the sound is going to be very little compared to it, and probably also because the air is moving as one big chunk, instead of in a fan where the air is less moving as one big chunk and moving at many more different speeds, and then that causes interactions and flows that causes more sound. Another thing is this works more efficient at very different speeds than a typical fan, and the fan blades below to pump the air you can make more efficient because they're smaller fans. In the smaller fans, there's less of a difference between the center of the fan and the fan blade very far away, so you can better design the fans to work over a broad range of speeds and to be more efficient themselves. Well, thank you very much for listening. Please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers in a year and 4,000 watch hours, which is really hard, but with your help, I think I can do it. Also, if you have any ideas for future videos, comments, or suggestions, please leave in the comment section below. Again, thank you very much. Goodbye.